Welcome to the Miami University Art Museum. We're so glad you could join us this evening. My name is Jack Green. I'm the Jeffrey Harrell 75 and Working Rose Director and Chief Curator here at the Miami University Art Museum. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to this reception and artist panel discussion moderated by William Messer in connection with the exhibition PhotOH, Photographers in the Heartland. Before we begin, I want to, on behalf of the Art Museum, we respectfully acknowledge the Shawnee and Miami people, who, along with other indigenous groups, were the first stewards of the land that this museum and also Miami University now occupies. The Miami University Art Museum is part of the College of Creative Arts, and we're accredited by the American Alliance of Museums. Celebrating artistic diversity is at the core of our mission, as we engage in a dialogue with and about visual culture. We're really proud to present today's program as part of our programming in conjunction with the special exhibition PhotOH, Photographers in the Heartland. We're really grateful to our exhibition sponsor, Photo Focus Cincinnati, and we're proud to host two out of 100 or more projects as part of the 2022 Photo Focus biennial theme, World Record, which considers photography's extensive record of life on Earth, humankind's impact on the natural world, and the choices we now face as a global community. And I just want to let you know that we have all the World Record guides, the maps with the listings of all the venues in our lobby, and also you'll find there's a few copies that we have if you want to consult the World Record book, which has got all of the venues listed and the details of those exhibitions. So our other exhibition supported by Photo Focus is A Lens for Freedom, photographs by Steve Shapiro, so please do take a look while you're here. We're also very grateful to the 27 artists displaying their work in PhotOH. If you're here in the audience, in addition to those people on the panel, could you just raise your hands? Any of the artists here? Okay, we've got a couple of the artists here as well, so welcome. Thank you for coming. We really thank you for all of your efforts. It's a really wonderful exhibition, and please do spread the word. There'll be a chance for continued conversation with members of our panel and artists over refreshments after the panel discussion and the Q&A. And I'd just like to remind guests that although the program does end at 7 p.m, the galleries are open till 8 p.m. every second Wednesday. So you can stick around and spend more time looking at the art if you want to. Just make sure you don't take your food and drink outside of the foyer. I just want to quickly mention an upcoming program on Saturday, which is Music in the Museum, 3 p.m. on Saturday, which you're welcome to join. And also we have an event on November 9th, which is our awards ceremony in recognition of the interconnected exhibition, our student response exhibition, for your calendars too. So without further ado, I now want to hand over to my colleague, Jason Shaman, Curator of Exhibitions, who'll be telling us a bit about the exhibition and introducing the program.
Thank you, Jack. And again, Jack said, welcome everyone. This is a really great opportunity for you to hear from some of the photographers in the exhibition, but also from my co-curator or co-conspirator, Bill Messer. We worked on this exhibition together, but I'll tell you a little bit about Bill. Bill will introduce, but we do have Bruce CHECEFSKY, Donald Black Jr., we have Kathleen Gerber and Lauren Nix here as artists in the exhibition, but I'll let Bill introduce them more formally. But just a little bit, about our moderator and a little bit about our work together. So Bill Messer is a photographer, curator, critic, and educator. Even beginning back in high school, he, or even younger, had a fascination with photography and was very engaged with the arts even in high school as far as to found the art program, later becoming a department at the Cincinnati Country Day School. And after that, he went on to Tufts University, where he studied architecture, art, new media, but eventually made his way out to California, to the School of the San Francisco Art Institute, where he earned a BFA in film and photography and an MFA in photography. So obviously, from his early academic times, photography was a focus for him. Throughout the 70s, he did a lot of work here in the States, in New York, as well as then going on to England. And there, Bill really made huge contributions to scholarship on contemporary British photography. So he eventually came back here to the US, returned back to Cincinnati, and directed Cincinnati's Contemporary Art Center's gallery program towards issues of body, sexuality, gender, and AIDS. Since about 2008, he has done primarily independent curatorial work and contributes significantly to the Iris Book Cafe and Gallery in Cincinnati's Over the Rhine. It is there that there is PhotOH, which is a connected exhibition of Ohio photographers that will be showing there. So if you have an opportunity, please go and see some of the other photographers throughout the state. Now, Bill came to us with this idea for an exhibition on Ohio photography. And we were able to move our schedule around a little bit because we saw this as a really great opportunity to really explore more photography throughout the state and to further connect with Photo Focus. It was also an opportunity because Bill is involved with a group known as Oracle. And they are going to be having soon, it's an international photography curators group, and they are actually going to be coming to this region. They will be here in Oxford, seeing the exhibition in Cincinnati and other areas throughout the state. So we saw this as a great opportunity to really showcase photography. So we very much appreciate Bill's bringing this to us. And working with me as a co-curator in developing this. So without further ado, I will turn this over to Bill Messer.
Thanks, Jason. Wow, no adieu, just bonsoir, actually, no adieu. One thing, I had not expected an extensive bio like that. I did see that coming.
I think I was just going to say 5 words.
Yeah, really.
So we're just gonna,
but one thing is, the program dealing with the body and all those things you mentioned, that was not at the Contemporary Art Center. That was at a place called Images Center for Photography, about 6 blocks down the street from the Contemporary Art Center. Just so that nobody thinks I'm trying to claim something that wasn't accurate. So, as Jason said, this exhibition reached out all over the state to museum curators, art center curators, photographers that I knew, to recommend photographers that they knew. Somewhere close to 100 photographers or maybe more were reached out to. I don't remember exactly how many of them sort of submitted work for us to whittle that down in curation, but we ended up with 27 of the submissions, 28 photographers, because one of the photographers were 2 photographers, and they are both here tonight. One of the things we tried to do was have a broad geographic distribution. That was important. not just from major cities as well, but from smaller college towns or smaller towns that weren't even college towns. We also, we weren't looking for this, we weren't trying to do this, but I'm happy that it turned out that we have one more female photographer than male photographer in the show. And so if the Guerrilla Girls come into town and they want to take on Miami University Art Museum, we're ready for them. And oddly enough, the same thing happened with PhotOH in Cincinnati at Iris. Except one more female photographer than male photographer. Just, you know, and we weren't actually taking that kind of thing into consideration. This panel has a lot of diversity on it too, but the diversity has a lot more to do with practice than it does with geography. Let's see, what I've written something here. We have a what might be called a straight shooter here, who works more traditionally. We have someone who employs a digital scanner as though it were a view camera. And we have a duo using conventional high-resolution digital camera to record and transform meticulously crafted model tableau into dystopian realities. And we're going to be, as we talk to them, we'll be putting the work that they submitted for the show on the screen behind you, and we'll cut out those lights that are illuminating the screen a little bit. But all, no matter how divergent their practice is, all create images which would not have existed but for the uniqueness of their vision. And that's one of the things that we look for in choosing all the artists in the show. So I'm going to start off by talking to you about Bruce CHECEFSKY. And basically I'll be reading the bios that they gave to us, or that I may have altered a little bit, but basically not altered what they had to say, just added some more information. Bruce received his BS from, Kutztown University, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where is that? Out in Kutztown.
In Kutztown, right. Which is near Allentown, Pennsylvania. Bucks County, just north of Bucks County.
We're living here.
Eastern part of Pennsylvania.
Excellent. And an MFA from Cranbrook Academy of Art, where Carl Toff was teaching it.
That's right.
He's exhibited extensively since then. His work's in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the Whitney Museum of American Art, Brooklyn Museum of Art, Cleveland Museum of Art, Akron Art Museum, Allen Memorial Art Museum, and many others. He received an Ohio Arts Council Individual Artist Excellence Awards in 2007, 2013, and 2017. A Creative Workforce Fellowship from the Community Partnership for Arts and Culture in 2009. If any of this is wrong, correct me, please. And as a
No, I
four-time...
just realized how old I am. It just makes me sick.
I was getting to that. He's an old geezer. Although he's like 10 years younger than I am. And a four-time recipient of the CEC, that's Cleveland.
I wish I could remember what it is. It's it's CEC Arsenic organization based in New York that had set up fellowships between artists in East and Central Europe and America. It was part of the George Soros Foundation.
So it's probably Central Europe something. CEC.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was thinking Cleveland something.
No.
That's an international fellowship, and so despite, it says here, I added this, despite his Spanish-sounding name, Bruce CHECEFSKY was an artist in residence at the Center for Contemporary Art in Warsaw, where he directed a film written in 1954 by the Polish experimental filmmaker. Oh, is it Andrzej Pilowski?
It's very good, yeah.
All right. And here's something he wrote, an artist statement. If you've seen the show, you've read these artist statements, but if you're planning to see the show after the talk, I'll read you a bit of his artist statement. He says, I use a flatbed scanner to create these images. Can we put some of Bruce's things? Oh, I can do it, can't I? Can I? Yeah, there we go. So this is the one that's in the PhotoFocus catalog, if you have a chance to see the catalog that the PhotoFocus Biennial produced for this show. Unlike other scanner pictures where objects are placed directly on the glass surface and copied, I mount a scanner vertically to a tripod with bungee cords and bring the device into my garden. That's not the only place he brings his scanner, but that's where the work in this show comes from. Along with a laptop computer and several long extension cords. So not quite as free as a view camera, but maybe you'll have a rechargeable system soon.
I occasionally I get a commission for a piece. So just a quick story. So someone asked me to do a scan.
Oh, you want to use the mic?
Can you hear me? Or
Well, let's use the mic anyway, because we have an audio, maybe an audio recording.
Oh, I see. Okay, so so the location was obviously out of my backyard. It was in the woods in northern Ohio, and so I had to figure out how to get power to the scanner, the electricity. So originally I had thought that you can buy these batteries that you throw in the back of your car in case you break down. And I spent a little while trying to figure out what to do, and then I realized that I had a Prius. So electric car, I could just plug into the car. And that's really what I did, is I parked the car on the side of the road and plugged in and used an extension cord into the woods.
So now I've turned myself on, is this working? Kind of, sort of? So another plug for a Prius, no pun intended. So he uses his scanner essentially as a medium format field camera. It says here, while technical acrobatics such as recording glitches are fascinating, my images are beautiful for the texture and color of the flowers. Beauty is the single most dominant criterion for my pictures. And which reminded me of a quote that I like. It's an oldie but a goodie. It comes from Shelley's Ode to a Grecian Urn. Near the end, the last stanza, it says simply, beauty is truth and truth beauty. And it says a few more things, but it basically says, that's all ye need to know. And can you talk about I call these scanographic records.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about the truth of these in conjunction with their beauty? They both faithfully represent and misrepresent their subjects. They even break that photographic fourth wall when the flowers sometimes, or some other subject, become entangled in the scanning mechanism because you've removed that glass platen that would protect that from happening. So like for instance here, the flower gets dragged a bit by the scanner, right?
That's right, and so I get asked a lot to kind of explain what the process is like, and I can do it very briefly. And I usually start out by saying that I'm going to tell you how I do it in the same way that my family passes down family recipes. There's just going to be some stuff that's left out, and you make it up on your own. And so I was playing around with the scanner one night. I've told this story before, and in my house, and my cat was there, and I put the cat on the scanner. I mean, who hasn't, right? And I thought I would just see what that looks like, and she wouldn't have anything to do with it. She gets off the scanner, but then she stands right next to it, and I thought, well, okay, I'll just tip the scanner, and so I just put the scanner on its side and ran it, and the image that came back was just pretty spectacular. I had really never seen anything like it before. And so the next morning I took the scanner with my laptop computer and some cords out into the garden. We have a flower garden in our backyard, and started scanning the garden. And it was just, these images were just remarkable for the detail really close to the glass. And then there was still a depth of field where you can see a horizon line in the back, even though you couldn't see the details all the way back. But it was recording shapes that were 30 or 40 feet away.
Was this about 2000, when? 18, 17, 16?
It was, it was 1789, I think. No, it was about 2009. Yeah.
And prior to that, if I remember your work, because you've been making work for a long time, you did a lot of photograms placing all kinds of different objects on the surface of the paper. So this surface, this platen surface, has always had a sort of important role for you.
Yeah, and I made the transition because I wanted to get out of, I was making these large photograms that were 4 by 4 feet and in big troughs of chemicals and just breathing all that stuff in. I just thought that can't be good. And so I wanted to make a transition into digital, some kind of digital imaging system. And so the images were, like I said, they were really spectacular and things I hadn't really seen before. And so I spent the day scanning the garden, and then I spent the week, and ended up spending the summer scanning the garden at different times of the day, different angles, and then eventually winter came, and I started looking at flower catalogs, and so I started buying flowers because I thought they would look good scanned, and then I ended up building a garden that spring with different flower shapes and colors to create kind of compositions that I can go in and scan, and that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the story. The images are almost always directly from the scan. They're not manipulated in a Photoshop, although they're JPEG images, and sometimes I'll drop them in a program to resize them. But the color is the color that the scanner records. And what I discovered in taking the scanner apart, this was a Epson 2450, kind of an old. It was one of the first models that was out there to scan negatives. So it had a glass lens, which nobody has in these scanners anymore. And when I took the scanner apart, there was a series of mirrors and a glass lens, and I said, man, this thing it looks like an SLR camera. It looked just like it. And so one of the biggest challenges early on was dust, getting dust on the glass, and because you recorded everything, bugs would come on the glass and stuff. So I took the glass out, and what you see as these kind of blurs is so there's no glass. It's the hull of the scanner is open, and the scanner runs on a rail, like a monorail across, and depending on the size of the file, it could be 5 seconds to 4 minutes, depending on the size. A flower or shrubbery or something, or a leaf or something will get caught in the scanner as it's moving across that arm, and it records that whole deal. And so that's what kind of creates the blur. And then it'll, like if you pull a flower and then let it go, it'll kind of boing back. And
Boing.
Yeah, and just all of that gets recorded.
Have you ever, so the horizontal sweep of them is, very attractive, but do you turn the scanner vertically sometimes too?
Well, this one you can't, because the monorail is on the ground, and so if you invert it in another direction, it doesn't have the capacity to pull itself up, or if it's upside down, it'll just flop in front.
So another question that occurred to me, if there was somebody moving in the background at more or less the same speed as the scanner, would you get kind of instead of just would you get a sort of ghost impression of that?
Yeah, you would, yeah. I've never tried that, but I will.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, thanks. But since then, most of what I've done is scan flowers and printed. This one is in a building in downtown Cleveland. We were able to get
Red Zinnia, this one?
Yeah, the Red Zinnia.
Yeah.
I worked with a company that does billboards, and we figured out how to take this 300 what do they call them? The digital resolution 300 resolution file, and we made it into an 8-foot by 14-foot piece that really held up really well, and they did something like they scanned the file, and I don't know what they did, but it came out really great.
Why didn't you send us that one? But we had plenty of room, as you can see.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thanks. Let me move on to Bruce. To Donald, sorry. B and B. Is this actually doing any good at all? Any good at all? It's on. Ah, it was on. Hang on a minute. It's feeding back. Is that better? It's getting there. Turning it down, turning it down, turning it down. How's that? Okay. Yeah, the little red light was on every time, but it wasn't doing anything. All right, Donald, you ready?
I'm ready.
So here's what Donald wrote us, except I added a little to it. We have 4 Cleveland photographers here, so the geographic disposition isn't there. But so Donald's also a Cleveland photographer, and in his bio he presented himself in the third person, so I'll read some of it to you. All it takes is for someone to drive through some of the roughest parts of Cleveland to witness the beauty and impact of Donald Black Jr.'s photography. Black's work is on the ground alongside of the people who are from the same environment that he represents. And when you hear his story, with all of its rugged and rough edges, you'll understand why it's so impressive that he was able to maintain the focus needed to avoid falling into the traps that his environment steadily situated and promoted. Here, there are no happy endings, no white picket fences, no silver spoons, or long lists of impressive schools, exhibitions, and awards. Instituting himself and tabulating all of his accomplishments isn't as impressive as knowing how serious and meaningful art is to the person who is doing it in order to stay alive. This work is, there, I have so many things to take care of. This work is from A Day No One Will Remember, which is a series of photographs of ordinary days that are filled with childhood play, imagination, quiet creative expression, and innocence. Centering the Black child in this series is critical because of their premature loss of adolescence. Stories of childhood pain and trauma often dominate our memory. These images represent the balance against the mental suffering that takes place when personal trauma overwhelms us. Created in Black's hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, a city marked by something. Marked with violence, poverty, grief, and trauma, these images carry the city's gritty mood and stark living conditions. Black's personal familiarity with Cleveland allows these images to illuminate an authentic and literal, quote, close to home narrative. There's no guarantee that these real and rare everyday experiences will happen again, making it critical for these images to be captured. Black leans on the camera to collect the valued memories of childhood, illustrating them in a rare light. And what it said was a rare light with, and then I thought, with what? So I could ask you that, but I decided to say within, if that's okay.
It must have been a typo.
Yeah. So
with
one of
emotions turned on.
And unconfined.
With emotions turned on and unconfined.
thank you.
So that just might have been
Wasn't there.
a copy and paste that didn't.
Didn't copy and paste.
Yeah, I got a heck of a copy editor, so. Look, she said that was there. She said she didn't drop the ball.
So one of the first person quotes I read of yours online reads in part, quote, "I love the experience of being Black, but this shit is hard."
Yeah, people love that.
People.
Yeah, people.
Photography has helped me find balance. So you're well known in Cleveland as a proponent of art in public spaces. You're known for your large murals in neighborhoods, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I wonder about the difference for you between offering your work as a neighborhood mural and presenting small framed images on the wall of a museum. How both of those jibe with the difficult personal story you talk about. So I wonder if you could tell people part of that story,
Okay.
and whether or not the museum context produces any ethical dilemmas for you to reconcile.
Oh, okay. All right. So if I frame what I was saying around art in public spaces in contrast to private exhibitions, museum gallery, smaller images on the wall, my early childhood, starting at 4, was Polaroids. So my early introduction to photography was small images. But I remember we had a large mural in our living room of like some trees. So I grew up with that kind of contrast of large images and small images. And then for me to be, blessed enough to get into the Cleveland School of the Arts at the age of 9, and traveling from where I lived on the southeast side of Cleveland, going to University Circle, I noticed that it wasn't much art on my trip to school. But then when I got to school, I was at the museum, and I'm Sarah's Hall, and I'm University Circle and all that stuff. And I was formally learning photography and printing in the darkroom, so I kind of got really, really addicted to the process of darkroom and prints and framing and matting. And I was learning that this is what you do to become, an artist or a photographer or successful or that sort of thing.
To make it.
Right. And I was very attracted to the process of creating. I went from being a black kid at Cleveland School of the Arts with a whole lot of, promise, and I'm the good kid, and 13 years perfect attendance, and I'm winning all the art awards, to being the only black kid in the class when I get to college. So entering the museum education system is what I usually kind of call it. I realized that it was when the assignments were happening, there was only one black person on the board. And I recognized that class after class, assignment after assignment. And, the history has taught me that the black person who is trying to, I guess, escape harsh realities of being residents in America, you want to become the first to do this, the first to do that. I'm the first to graduate from college in my family. I'm the first to go to college in my family. I can remember one of my professors I got the Kodak scholarship, and he said, I can never forget you getting this award because you're the first black person to get it, and your name is Donald Black, wink, wink, ha, ha, ha. A couple years later, this guy's like getting caught with pictures of students on his computer and a whole crazy other story, right? So to have those experiences and the environment, the education environment, the white art world kind of telling me become the first black, I go to these shows, I go to the museum, I do everything college taught me, and I'm realizing that none of the people that I know even get marketed to come to these experiences. And then I noticed that I didn't even get those promo invitations in the mail. And then I started to question why, if the people who I feel identify personally with what I'm making, and they don't come to the shows, why am I trying so hard to be inside of these places if these places, when I'm there, talk to me about what the fuck do they need to do to get these black people to come? Because it's like, well, we invited you, or we invited her, or we invited them, and we thought we was gonna get all of the black people to come. So that didn't work. So I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, okay, so everybody recognizes that there's no black folks here, but it's killing me inside, because it's like I need the audience to show up. I need to get some of the energy back. I'm looking for more opportunities. This was before diversity, equity, and inclusion became, an institutional kind of a addiction. So I said, well, if what I learned in following rap music, hip hop music, is that the hip hop urban culture took what they were doing to the corner. And I'm in a city where I'm looking at foreclosure and all these buildings and all these walls. So I started learning city ordinances and saying, how can I bring my work to the people that are represented in the work. So that's what I started doing. I started putting the images up large, and I started volunteering to do it. So it's like I'm not really making money in the museum and in the gallery, but I'm also not really making money putting the murals up either. But it was just, it was very, very fulfilling. And I figured if I was going to create a business card, that would be the best business card, which is to put some of this work up large. So me putting my work in the neighborhood created a balance that didn't exist for me. I have grappled with not participating in the gallery museum structure for a very long time. Me feeling like, oh, this is not the place for me. I'm not supposed to be here, is what I used to think that the learn was, you know. But then I started to realize, like, oh, okay, well, it's not. It's my world that I exist in, and I can participate in being an influence to that world with my observation of participating since I was a 9-year-old. And a lot of my contemporaries, a lot of Black artists I'm around, seem to have a different desire, which is to be included, which is to receive the awards, to receive the fellowships. And then when it's time to vent gripes, I'm the one to get a call. I get a phone call and say, well, Donald, can you come vent for us? Because you were born in this world of things. And oftentimes it's misperceived that, oh, I'm the angry Black guy. You know, it's these labels that have gotten created before I was ever born, being a Black man in America. And I've tried to dodge all of them. And the one that has seemed to stick is being angry about all of the bullshit that's going on that people pretend that's not happening. And I say, no, this is observation. Like, I'm a very blessed person. I've been making art my entire life. I've never worked a full-time job ever in my life. I've been selling artwork since I was 6. I don't need anybody specifically, any place specifically, to continue to live as an artist. But if you ask me my observation, I have a very intense one. And making images and putting them in public spaces was needed for me because I felt myself starting to be angry that when I print it and put it on the wall, I'm told I need to photograph more white people, or that people don't buy pain. I mean, I got a laundry list of things that are said to me when people think that I'm a student more than they think that I'm an artist. So that's kind of the contrast of the two.
So for what it's worth, I don't feel anger in your work. There's a very warm, hopeful connection in the work that we've seen, that you sent to us. You know, and for instance, well, almost any of them really, but this one here, I don't know, just adore it.
Yeah, I'm not angry. Sometimes I might be sad, but I'm not angry. I think it has to just do with media system and the projection of who people are and that sort of thing. And I think that's is some labeling that's happened. You know?
What was the phrase you just used about pain?
I'm not sure. What did I say?
Oh, I don't know. It was really.
Pain doesn't sell.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
it was had alliteration and it was something else with a P in pain. People don't buy pain. Maybe
Yeah, that's what.
maybe
Yeah,
it
that
was
was
something
it.
like that.
Yes. And I was like, oh wow, that's what you see. You see pain.
Yeah. So that's what you heard from people. People don't buy pain, and they thought you were showing pain, and the people wouldn't buy it.
Yeah, well, I feel like depending on where you're from and what you're exposed to, that when you see this, you see pain. Yep, so it's interesting. I've just been collecting it. I've been collecting these stories and conversations and sharing them. You know, it's like, oh, this is very, very interesting.
So how long have you been doing this?
I've been taking pictures since I was 4 years old. So
And you are now
42. So 38 years of having a camera and 29 years of learning the history book system of it all.
You know the work of JR?
Yes.
So I've worked with him both in this country and in France, and he's huge.
He's huge.
He's enormous. But a big difference between your work and his work is he wants a kind of neutral image of people so that it's just the person who participates in the neighborhood. That's usually a face, you know. And what you're putting up might well be described as art, you know.
Yeah.
They're pictures that are beautiful pictures with feeling inside of them, and as you put it, if you hadn't have photographed these moments, we wouldn't have them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really looking forward to coming up to Cleveland and seeing some work on the walls.
That's exciting.
Have the rest of you seen any of his work up in Cleveland?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, you recently got there, but Bruce, you have, yeah. Well, I'm gonna, go ahead.
Popular is really not the right way to say it, but you're
Give him the
seen.
mic.
I mean, you're in a lot of exhibitions, and people know who you are and respect you, and so I think you know, you've really kind of carved a spot out.
Thank you.
If that's
I've been trying to.
yeah.
So before they got here a few days ago, I sent them all pictures of each other's work to invite them to think of a question they might ask to one of their fellow photographers. But first I want to get to Lori and Kathleen, and I'll tell you that they've been making art collaboratively for 23 years. They are nationally and internationally celebrated for this work. They're awarded state Arts Council grants from Ohio and New York, culminating in a John Simon Guggenheim Foundation Fellowship in Photography in 2014. They've been based for several years, 3.5 years or so, in Cincinnati until this July. Previously, 20 plus years in Brooklyn, and now they're in Cleveland. Lori was a grad student also at the Ohio State University.
That Kathleen was the grad.
That was you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kathleen. That's on a bio of you, by the way,
Oops.
that I found online. Yeah, oops. Okay.
Well, we are one.
I know. They construct meticulously detailed model environments and photograph the results. Here's a quote. We consider ourselves faux landscape photographers, building meticulously detailed model environments and photographing the results. I think I just said that. Through the photographic process, the fictional scene is transformed into a surreal space where scale, perspective, and the document create a tension between the material reality of the scene and the impossibility of the depicted narrative. In this space between evidence and plot, I like that phrase, the imagination of the viewer is unlocked, engaged, and provoked. We want our scenes to be as rich, complex, detailed, and ultimately open-ended narratives. So as with Bruce here, how you make your work can be fascinating for its viewers, and usually is. Many are astounded to learn that you manufacture and assemble in miniature every part of your photographs by hand to create the final illusion. I've been looking at your work for years, it seems like decades actually, it may have been decades. The title of the body of the recent work is Empire, and its thematic content has long revolved around decay and ruin and reclamation by nature. Usually devoid of living human presence, I think always probably, producing an apocalyptic feeling. I remember particularly an image of a deserted and ruined library where the ceiling had collapsed and there was a tree growing up through it, and there were still books on some of the shelves, many had fallen off. I don't know, when was that one made?
2007.
Okay. So here's a question for you. Has this sort of darkish dystopian vision always occupied your work? And how does it equate to the inherent optimism of your perfectionism?
Bill, could you advance the slide? Yeah. Is that okay?
Oh, sorry. Yep, time for me to get on the ball here.
I mean, I've always always been obsessed with end times. I grew up in rural western Kansas. She grew up in,
Central Illinois.
and so I've had a whole,
Can you put your microphone on?
oh, it's not?
It was on.
Okay.
I thought I heard it, but
So my childhood was dotted with tornadoes, hailstorms, insect infestations, floods that we're all experiencing now, less so when 54 years ago. So that's how my childhood was informed, was Mother Nature. So I've always been obsessed with ruin and decay.
and it's always been in the work.
Always, yes. It would be nice to try to make happy pictures, but it's
Not
not,
gonna
it's
happen.
it's not in me personally.
I never, oh, go ahead.
Say, I don't have the same obsession as Lori. It freaks me out too much, so I just kind of enjoy it through her. Because when she tells a lot of these stories, it is through the eyes of a child. So it's more about wonder, and it's like, there was the tornado when we found this ham in this oven in the woods, and it was great. So you don't see everything else and hear everything else.
Yeah, I remember reading Lori, you came from a small town in Kansas, and I also read that you were drawn to disaster movies when you were a kid too.
Absolutely. I'm Planet of the Apes. I grew up watching that many times over, and Poseidon Adventure and Towering Inferno and Logan's Run. I mean, I could just go Airport 76. I'm starting to show my age of these amazing disaster movies. And I was a young child in the movie theater, and I'd just be like, I can't believe this is watching this. Amazing.
Well, I found myself wondering whether you'd ever seen, speaking of Kansas, The Wizard of Oz, and with its utopian vision of Oz and the eventual discovery of it being total fakery. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Does that play in at all?
Can you believe I've never actually seen The Wizard of Oz?
No.
I think I was fighting against it because I was expected to watch it as a child. I've also never seen Gone with the Wind or Titanic. No, I haven't.
So you might really enjoy watching Atlanta burn down, but I highly recommend Wizard of Oz, specifically because of that collision between a utopian fantasy reality and the fact that it's all fake and it doesn't, prove to hold what you hoped it would hold. Well, that was my one.
Sorry.
Yeah, big question. So let me turn it over to you. When I sent you their work, did any questions pop into either of your heads?
Oh, well, first of all, is that your image on Superior around,
83rd?
yeah,
Yes.
beautiful. I look at that every morning. Oh, actually every evening as I'm returning from downtown back to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can you describe it?
It is a silhouette of a father playing chess with his young son, and their heads are almost touching, and they're engaged in this amazing chess game. And you just can imagine the conversations that the father and son are having while playing this, very thoughtful, very logic game. Yeah. Correct? Am I correct?
Yes,
Thank you.
100%. Yeah.
I think Bruce, on yours, it's more of a technical, like how large of, or how big of a span can you do with this? Like, it's just limited by the tripod, or what sort of framework?
Do you want to pass on the mic?
Yeah,
You guys can share a mic and, yeah.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by span.
The field.
No,
Depth of field, or?
No, see, I'm not a photographer.
Okay, yeah.
So,
How
I guess
big
like the height of the flowers and things, like would you ever want to really exaggerate that?
It's kind of a one-to-one, so the opening of this particular scanner is probably about 8 by 10 inches. And so it's more or less whatever can fit in there. If the scanner is too far away from what it's scanning, then it's all blur. And so in order to get that crisp detail, it has to be almost touching the scanner.
Because there's no depth of field at all, right? It's set up for something that lies right on that plant, and that's
But
it.
you wouldn't wanna say, like, stack, say, almost like shelves of them up and get, like a tall vertical.
Yeah, I don't think so.
That's fine.
Yeah, I can try it. I mean, you mean after the files are created to tableau them, kind of, not tableau, but them to
No,
stack.
do one stretched out long.
Yeah, it's more of a horizontal, the scanner, at least the one I have, doesn't have the ability to pull itself up. So it's more of a kind of left to right, horizontal image maker, I guess. You know. But I can try it.
But you didn't stop at gardens, did you? What else do you scan?
Oh, I've scanned pig's head from the West Side Market, a goat's head, chicken feet, fish, different fish, a cow tongue.
Cow tongue?
Hoofs, basically animal parts. And
some human body parts too, right?
some nudes, and then people's faces, and then still lifes, you know, kind of fruits and vegetables kind of thing.
Did the two of you feel any connectivity? Is that partly why you asked the question?
I was just curious. Well, because I guess I was curious if it was a really long photograph and it surrounded me.
Yeah. So it's possible to take the scanner, make a scan, mark the spot where the scan ended, move it, scan the next 2 feet, and so on, and then take those digital files and scene them together to create a really long image. I've not done that, but that's entirely possible. But I have I've made an animation film, because 24 scans is a second. So to scan and then use the scanners as picture frames to create a short animated film. And one of the interesting things that I discovered about the scanner is that as the scanner goes across an object, it records part of the side, and then it records the front, and then it records the other side. So it's very unlike a straight photograph. It really has this kind of semi-three-dimensional quality to it, and I think that's what gives it that kind of awkward or kind of quirky look to it.
So how far? It's like a continuous stereo photograph in a sense that where the lens starts and where it ends are separated by whatever the length of the scanner is, as though stereo vision, but it blends it all the way through, huh?
Yeah, the scans they could be a minute long, so they're also kind of enveloped in this sense of time, and whatever happens during that minute or so is recorded.
So you can slow down the scan.
Yeah, increase the DPI size and it slows down.
Yeah. Did any questions arise in your mind when you looked at these two folks' work?
The question, yeah.
It's on.
The questions that arose that came in my mind was probably to the whole group, because it's something that I'm always asking myself creatively, is the idea of purpose, and then like the attraction to creation. I was curious to know, is that are those thoughts going through you guys' minds when you're making or attempting to make or thinking about how much you've made ever? Was what I was thinking when I was looking through the work.
wonder if you could expand that question a bit.
Expand the question.
Well, creation and making, I mean, people who are engaged in creation and making have some connection to thinking about it, but I'm wondering if there's something more specific you're going for.
I guess I'm always asking myself, is what I'm doing what I was born to do? So I guess that's my question. Is that something that you guys, does it grapple you guys' mind like it does mine?
Well, I'm trying to think, the reason why
It might not be on, if that's,
the reason why I
Okay.
even started making the type of work that I do, which is in the actually in my apartment on a table, is because I didn't actually find myself to be a very good photographer. I worked for my college newspaper as first the darkroom technician and the photo editor, so I was supposed to go out and take pictures of sporting events, people talking, and I was horrible at it. So that's not the type of photography I was ever going to be drawn to, is taking pictures, like engaging people, because I'm kind of a shy person. So what you do is amazing. I would never in my life be able to capture that type of emotion from the people in front of me, because I'm too closed off. I'm behind my camera, but I actually don't get behind my camera that often. I get behind the camera maybe 3 times a year. I'm more stuck in my studio making things because it keeps my hands active. And my hands active keeps my brain active. And I get lost in my world, and it keeps me out of trouble. It keeps me out of buying things, like shopping on eBay at 3 a.m., which I've actually had some problems with at times. So, I'm listening to the television or, listening to music and keeping my hands busy.
yeah, I was wondering what kind of trouble you'd get into.
I bought some questionable cameras at 3 a.m., from eBay back in the early days. Yeah. So, do I, I think I've just been lucky to be at the right place at the right time, doing the right type of photography to be seen in front of you guys here now. What we do isn't unique or all that special. There's other people doing the same things that we are doing. We just happen to be a little bit more fanatical about the detail that we're trying for. You can see much more amazing images of people who've actually created these digitally online. If you just search for, deviant art or apocalypse, you're gonna see some really amazing things that appear in video games, and that's something that we can't even begin to fathom. So why we keep doing it is because we just get enough joy out of making these things and working with the simple things of a ruler, an X-Acto knife, and materials in front of us. Yeah.
Styrofoam, glue.
Acrylic, paper, foam. Yeah, we try to make our materials lie.
How about foliage? What are you using to do that? Because a lot of people ask me about that. How did they do that?
Years and years and years of practice, and we're still trying to perfect our technique.
All right, I shouldn't ask secrets.
Oh, no, it's like materials that you can actually buy and assemble.
Magic.
Yeah.
Bruce, did you come up with a question when you looked at other people's work?
I will, but I'd like to answer Donald's question, if I can. I wanted to be a sports announcer, calling baseball games. That's really what I wish I did in my career. I just think it would be so interesting and fun. But I think baseball is just such a beautiful game. Just the poetics of it is just a lovely game. And so when I was in high school, and a writer, when I was in high school, I wrote the school newspaper. And the only problem is the school didn't have a newspaper. and I got suspended from school. And you think now I'd probably get like a scholarship to Columbia or something. And so, I was under this dark cloud, and I went to the dark room. room, because that's where you can hide, basically, right? And that's kind of how I got interested in photography. But more recently, in the last 4 years or so, after having a life-altering experience, I've taken up writing again, and I wrote throughout but I'm doing it really on a kind of more of a journalist for local neighborhood newspapers that are just, the footprints are really small. They're really neighborhood centric. Southeast Cleveland, the Midtown Huff area, near West Side. Every neighborhood in Cleveland has its own neighborhood newspaper, and so I've been covering local politics, the mayor's race, and the governor's race, and the county race, and interviewing people in those neighborhoods. So I've been to Southeast Cleveland, and I've talked to a bunch of people there and published their stories in newspapers, because I think that they're really the heroes of the city, and everything that Donald was saying about the city is true. It's a tough city, and I lived in Philly, and that was a really tough city. But Cleveland is a hard city. It's the one of the poorest cities in the country. It's racially segregated. It has more than 50% of the children live in poverty. It hasn't been neglected, but it has been ignored, and it really and because I work right in the Huff neighborhood, I kind of see some of it outside my window, but I really feel connected to the stories that people want to tell about what their lives are like in Cleveland, and they're just extraordinary. Like, one is just better than the other, and so I still scan and make photographs, but a lot of what I do day in and day out is call people and ask them if they want to be interviewed, and go see them, take pictures of them.
So it's a way of reaching beyond your garden.
Well, I think it's a way of reaching beyond the garden, but I think it goes back to Donald's question about what are you born to do, and I think that sense of being creative, whether you do photography or you paint or you sculpt, or whether you do all of those things or whether you do one of them, it's really not about the process in a sense. It's about the life that you choose to live as an artist and how you live it. And I think that's one of the most remarkable things about being an artist and about knowing other artists.
Awesome. I don't know where we are for time, but where are we on time?
6:37. 6:37.
Which means we have how much more time?
Oh, I don't know.
Time for maybe some Q&A from
Yeah, that's what
from the floor.
but before we go to the question, did you come up with a question to ask anyone else, or a general question?
Well, I wanted to ask Donald about the title of the series.
Okay.
If you could talk a little bit more about that.
There's the mic.
So the short answer for the title of the series is what William said. And he said, if I wouldn't have been around to take these pictures, they wouldn't exist. But the more detailed version is, I feel like I was kind of labeled as a child as the good kid who was going to be able to make it out. And I found myself on the journey of out and away. And I had a really traumatic experience in college of a buddy of mine being murdered when we went out. And I found myself living in New York, terrified that I was going to fly in as this very elite person from my neighborhood and inner surroundings going to funerals. So I decided at 27 not to be in another city and to be in Cleveland taking pictures of the people who were around me. I found myself in the museums in New York, and people were from smaller places and worse places than Cleveland, showing at these places that I was taught to try to pursue. So in moving back to, well, actually before I moved back to Cleveland, I would come in town and I noticed that I was really obsessed with the pictures that I was taking of the people while I was visiting for about 4 years. And I felt like I was doing what I always do, which is follow what the work is telling me to do. And I felt like the work was telling me to go back to Cleveland now. So as I started to accumulate these images very subconsciously, I started to see these images as the images that would never have existed if I had never taken them. And when I would show some of my cousins, some of my family, some of my friends, they would say, I don't even remember that. And I'm sitting there thinking like, that's funny. These are the images that no one will remember. Yeah, so that's the more detailed days that no one will remember, even though ultimately no one will remember.
And if I can, about the tableaus, there's so much like a movie set. I wonder if you had thought about, if you've made films, or if you've thought that the work would be used for that.
We have not made films ourselves, but we do make miniatures that get used by other people to film for advertising, a little bit TV, film, stuff like that. I don't know that either one of us has that real like storytelling urge right now. Maybe that'll change. We're so into just creating the actual space itself. It's coming up with the story and character and all that stuff. There's way other talented people, but we love to work with them, and that's what we think we can contribute.
And you've worked together from the start?
I joined in, I don't know, a few years after you kind of got going.
Yeah, because I remember the first thing I ever saw of yours had only your name on it. Yeah. I just want to add one thing. When you were talking about what you wanted to be when you were young, I remember I wanted to be an architect, but and when Jason was talking about doing my little bio, if you've probably noticed that there's a camera collection in the back of the museum called the Charles M. Messer Leica collection. Yeah, so it was kind of predetermined that cameras were going to be, part of my life, and it ended up it took as a way, But I probably would have been either an architect or hopefully, like a superstar music performer, but that didn't happen. So I saw a question back there, and I'm trying to remember that there might be some that I can't see behind me. So do you want to hand them one of the mics? Thanks. And both of you, in front and behind, can have the mic.
Sure. I wanted to hear more about Kathleen and Lori's process, because I didn't know, looking at your images, that they weren't, outside in some place. And so, and particularly when Kathleen said, I'm not a photographer, I thought, well, wait a minute, you got photographs. So if I could hear more about that, I would love to hear that. And then also I wanted to say to Donald Black, first of all, you look like a student, so I can understand confusing you and making statements to you that might be off-putting. But the fact that I love that you're working in black and white, and that people can look at your images and not see, the hopefulness or peace or beauty in that, but just the fact that they're African Americans also has this connotation of anger and despair. That's something we really need to work on, and I think your work will help us with that. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, us first, yeah, okay. So yes, Kathleen and I, we work collaboratively, and we divide the work up according to our strengths. So I come up with this idea of what I think would make an interesting picture, and I ask her, are you interested in it? Because if they take about anywhere between 3 to 15 months to make, so we have to be interested in sustain the idea for that long. And I do everything that's kind of hard edged. I create the land, the ground. Before this, we did some interiors, the walls, the furniture, the cabinets, and she does everything that's actually interesting. the tiny details. And when we first started doing this, we'd get to a point of being like, we'd make them perfect, and then I'd step away and leave, and she would start destroying them and doing paint washes and making them look old and aged, so they actually are pristine from the beginning, and then we work backwards.
And yeah, we construct them out of basic materials, foam. Some of the greenery is things you might use to make things on like a train layout, that type of thing. And yeah, she really does have a lot of the overall vision, and usually anything sculptural. I love trying to make things look real, so a lot of the aging, rusting, weathering, a lot of the little sculpture. I made the lawnmower, I still love it. Pull it out, I look at it. I wish I could go back and do it again. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
And I don't understand the camera. I make it, I walk away, it works a long time, I come back and it's done.
I just have to add, how big is the lawnmower, so I can visualize how big this is?
It's, I don't know, it's,
An inch or two, maybe?
no, it's like maybe 4 inches long.
Well, with the handle, huh?
Yeah.
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 So this whole scene is how big? Show us how big.
Believe it or not, that scene is probably close to 8 feet wide, but the lawnmower is so close to the lens, it's small. And then the camera, because it sees in a cone, it just eats up a lot of landscape, so you'd have to keep just making it out bigger and bigger and bigger.
Can I ask you a technical question also? If it's 8 feet wide, how much depth, and do you ever work with depth of field degenerating to give you atmospheric perspective, or do you like everything to be sharp?
I try to make everything as sharp as possible. Before digital, we did 8x10 film, so I was always stopping down to like f22, f64 as far as I could. Now with digital, you can, I shoot these in sections and stitch them together, and then I shoot them side to side and also front to back for maximum depth of field. Just because, you know, we're spending so much time, but to only have like this much in focus would just like break my heart. So I wanna, yeah.
The early work you did play with
The earliest work I did was like really shallow depth of field, very, very candy-like, and you know, very negative, minimal focus. But over the years, I've perfected the technique just enough to be somewhat satisfied. Every time I look at these, it's like there's ways I wish we could improve it, and I wish we could go back and do this again, but we don't. So
They totally fascinate people, you know, once they find out you made it all by hand, it just blows their mind.
and then they ask, do you keep the models? We say no, we throw them away, or we recycle
Oh,
them.
of course, right.
Yeah, well, we kept the most important part, which was the lawnmower.
Sure.
it.
Right.
Store them for us.
You have to use that lawnmower again in another snowscape, right?
Okay, another question here.
Hi, I have a question for Miss Nix. And you mentioned that you love disaster movies, but you haven't saw Gone with the Wind or Titanic yet. And can I take this as like you enjoy finding or digging beauty from a bunch of chaos rather than just record exists beauty? And do you think photography is seeking for beauty that other people cannot see? And other question for Mr. Bruce, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. And when can we see your photograph of like a skinny cat? That's it.
All right. So if I had to choose between, say, living in Washington, D.C. or living in Baltimore, I would choose Baltimore. It's just so much more interesting to me with the industry, the decay, and I'm sorry that I do like decay, but it's just, you know, what do we call it now? Is it like ruin
Yeah, call it
porn,
Roman porn.
like of Detroit,
Yeah.
you know? So I just recently moved to Cleveland, and other people might see these abandoned buildings, but I see opportunity. I see like this could be something. If someone could just, you know, have a vision the way that I do, it's like, oh my God, these are amazing pieces of architecture just ready for opportunity. And I try to tell everyone around me, it's like, you guys should be moving to Cleveland. This is where you can have space and creativity, and the people are so nice. This is the place to actually establish an art career rather than living in New York and, because we did it, pay, most of your paycheck goes to rent and you have no space to create, and all you do is hustle and hustle and hustle. And here in Cleveland, I feel like we can breathe and just think about what's in front of us.
So we have to ask, was Cincinnati too pretty?
Cincinnati's very beautiful, but Cleveland is closer to what I want out of a city, which to me, Cincinnati has, it's already out of my reach for opportunity. Cleveland still holds lots of opportunity.
What does that mean? The first part especially, it's out of your reach for creativity.
Well, if I wanted to buy a house in Cincinnati, I couldn't afford it.
Oh, that's what you mean by out of
That's
reach.
what I mean by it's out of reach. All of the spaces have already been taken over by up and coming breweries or new apartments or shopping or, you know, it just goes on.
That's why we lost you.
Cleveland is opportunity, just
Okay.
waiting to happen if people would just like believe in it. And I do think Cleveland is going to become a major city along with Buffalo as we watch climate change, because Cleveland is going to be kind of protected from some of the worst ravages of, you know, and the only problem that people don't understand is because we haven't advertised that, because maybe we don't want an influx of people into Cleveland. Maybe we want to keep it for ourselves a little bit longer.
I'm trying to get everybody to move back.
Yes.
I'm like, this is the best place to be.
This is the best place to be.
The person who asked the first question, though, you also included Bruce in your question. Did you want him to respond?
Me?
No, yeah.
I actually included, Donald Black, and yeah, I would like to.
I mean, Donald is what I meant.
Yeah.
Why am I mixing you guys up?
You didn't get to say it again?
But
No,
don't
she
forget about
asked
the cat.
about the cat.
Oh, and the cat. We'll get to the cat.
What was, can you repeat the question?
Really, it was a
I
comment
got the-
about
Yeah.
the fact that you, first of all, I like that you're using black and white. The contrast is beautiful. And that when I look at your images, I see hope and peace and beauty. And the fact that people can look at your images and because they're African American subjects, see something different, speaks to how we are socialized, I think, to think certain things about people. And I just wanted you to comment about.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can comment on that. So, black and white photography, I got introduced to that very early, darkroom photograms. My photography teacher used to work at the Cleveland Museum of Art. She was formally trained. She was in the lineage of Minor White, so her teacher studied with Minor White. So when she apparently volunteered at Cleveland School of the Arts by way of Cleveland Museum of Art, she fell in love with the project she did and eventually became the teacher, built relationships outside of the city, and thought that it would be amazing that if she could put cameras in these kids' hands coming from all over the city of Cleveland, we would have an experience similar to what she had, being a little girl in Cleveland Heights walking around in the woods with a camera.
Who was she?
Tony Sterinsky. And she was very traditional, so we fell in love with black and white photography. Me studying photography, I feel like what I witnessed or what I saw is images of black people being photographed from an outsider's perspective. And I feel like that outsider's perspective started to play a role in, the worldwide perception of how people of color are seen, from the camera angles and positions to the activities. I feel like, I often say people expect me to be a basketball, drug dealing, playing rapper, is what I say. And I say that, to go to your point, I'm feeling, I've always felt like I'm looking at a void of imagery and not a lot of imagery of how I feel like I see myself or how I see the people that are around me. So it's been very intentional for me to photograph Black folks. It started out unintentional. You know, I didn't know I was photographing Black people until somebody told me I need to photograph more white people. And I remember saying, I thought I was taking pictures of the people around me, like everybody was taking pictures of the people that were around them. But those kind of things stood out, and I'm like, oh wow, I didn't recognize that I was taking pictures of Black people early on.
You were taking pictures of people.
I was taking pictures of people. I was taking pictures of my friends, you know, and it evolved and it turned into me saying, oh, okay, well, the way I've learned the history, when the camera came out, Black people were slaves. So if I'm a descendant of that, you know, what can I do differently? If I'm like reincarnation, I'm in the future, I would love to add to the worldwide void of images of people of color and Black folks photographed from the insider's perspective.
This is a good time to be doing that, though, don't you feel?
I used to be afraid of this time period because I feel like I watched the digital camera come and I thought everybody was gonna try to take the pictures I was trying to take, and I thought I was gonna have to compete. And I thought I was doing something different. I thought I was gonna avoid racism being an artist, and I thought that I was gonna fall in love with photography because I didn't want to paint my drawings. Like, that was my plan. And then the digital camera came and I'm like, holy shit, everybody's getting a camera. And I'm in a world of people who are hustling the camera, like making money off of it. And then I looked up and my training and darkroom knowledge made me the teacher. And I'm sitting there explaining to people that you got a camera in your pocket, it's not a phone. You know, take these pictures of people around you and record this video. And I feel like ultimately that's what we're all supposed to be doing, is not talking on the pocket camera that's a computer, but kind of using it as a tool or a weapon in a similar way that Gordon Parks spoke of the camera as a weapon. So yeah, it's a wonderful time.
It's like Woody Guthrie's guitar.
Well, I feel like this is what I was born to do. You know, it was like, oh.
So I think I see one more question back there, and then we want to hear about the cat.
Yeah, and I can keep this quick, and it's more of an observation maybe than a question, but Bruce, related to your scanned images. And if you jump back to any of them, but maybe the first one, because what grabbed me from the beginning was less the foreground and more the background. And I found myself, and it may be my love of abstraction, I particularly enjoyed trying to figure out what happened as the scanner moved. You talked about how it hit it and how it captured something three-dimensionally, so I'm intrigued with that, but I love the backgrounds of these images, and I've been trying to figure out what they are. You talk about how they're not in focus, but that's where my eye goes.
Yeah, that's the part of the recipe I don't give up. No, so what you see in this one, what looks like 3/4 of the way up, a kind of light brown streak, is actually a wood fence in my yard that's about 20 feet away with the sun shining on it. And the blue is the edge of a planter that I built out of wood and painted blue. And so the background is always blurred, and I think it's because the lens in the scanner is equivalent to like an f2 or an f2.4, something that has a very shallow depth of field, but it will record the light that's coming in. And through the years of doing it, I had also discovered that if I scanned early in the morning, at 6 o'clock when the sun was coming up, or 6:30, that those images tend to be warmer. If I scan later in the day, between 4 and 6, or 6 and 8, especially in the summer, those tended to be cooler. And it really had to do with the temperature of the day. The scanner, we think of as just recording documents, but it has this very sensitive, I don't know, digital palette, and it won't work in direct sunlight. It never does. It's too much light. So there are days I would look at the weather to see if there was a cloudy day, because it's like being in the studio and having light bounce off the clouds back down into, it's like a diffuser. And so the timing of when I would scan would ultimately play into the way it was, the coloration of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's all, also because the blurred background has been scanned, and so it has a strong horizontal thing, that combined with the bits of the flower that got stuck in the scanner and dragged, you have this strong sense of movement in this picture, you know, like this dahlia is zipping across the screen, and you caught a quick, almost like a sports photograph, you know. It's pretty funky. And the cat?
The Scan Cat calendar will be out next month, so check the bookstore, and if you don't see it there, you can always reach out to me on Facebook. I don't have those images anymore, but I should probably reenact it.
So I'd like to thank everybody for being here, all of you. I'd also like to say, I don't think we could have picked a better 4 people to be on this panel. So thanks for being here, and thank you to you. And the museum is open for another hour, so feel free to come talk to the artists and see the show, etc., etc.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Bruce, and to all of our panelists, and to also our audience. Thank you so much for coming this evening. There's still some food and drink for a while, but the exhibition's open again for another hour, so please feel free to browse and also talk to some of the artists. So
Yeah,
thanks very much.
please graze.
Yeah, thank you.